Today we're going to be drawing our hand, and a lot of people think that drawing the hand is a very difficult thing to do, but by using the principles that I've shared with you, we can make it a lot easier. So just to go over those again, and this time I'll put it in a little different order. Your first principle is observation. You need to look, and in order to see what your subject is, you have to really look at it. And then the next principle, I'm going to switch and say, draw lightly. And your third one is simple shapes. So what are you drawing lightly? Your simple shapes. And then relationship. And then repetition, drawing the same thing over and over again until you feel comfortable. And we're going to add one more principle, and that is patience. Everybody operates at a different frequency, and so if you can operate where you normally do, but speed doesn't have anything to do with your end result. So if you can learn to be patient, just take whatever time it takes you to eliminate this line, change that line, and until you get the end result that you're looking for. Okay? So as we look at the hand, the certain observations that I want to make, I'm going to use my pencil as a measuring device, and I'm going to use the palm of the hand as a block, the fingers as a block, a unit, right? So if you look at, now your hand and my hand is going to be different, but you're going to be drawing your hand as I'm drawing my hand. And so if I look at the width of my palm and the length, it's almost the same, right? A little bit longer than it is wide, but not much, hardly noticeable. So if I take that again, the width, and I measure the longest finger, it's here again almost the same. It's just a little bit different, a little bit shorter. So when I begin then, I'm going to begin with the simple shapes. So I'm going to just, for me, I'm going to draw a circle, because it's, you know, the human body is not square, it's not rectangular. They're more cylinders or ovals than anything. So to begin with, I'm drawing this darker than I normally would because I want you to see it, right? And then I do this in terms of that is going to represent where the fingers are going to go. And then I just do that to know that I'm going to have a thumb over there. So basically, that's the way that I'm going to start. And that's the way, now, what I share with you is only one way to do things. And if you can apply them and get to where you want to go, that's wonderful. If you can figure out a better way to do it, do it. But this is what I'm sharing with you. So that's the beginning point. And as you, for those who have been with me before, when you draw lightly, you can't see it. Or I should say, when I draw lightly, you can't see it. So I've had to draw a light drawing to begin with so that I can go over it and you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so what we have then, looking at relationships, so we have the very beginning, and when I'm looking at my hand, one of the things that I'm going to observe is my thumb. This part of the thumb, where is that in relation to the palm of my hand? Well, if you didn't really look, you wouldn't have a clue that it's basically right in the middle in terms of on that edge where it is. That's that relationship that we're looking for. So I'm going to start right here. And hopefully draw dark enough where you can see it. And the other thing that a relationship that I'm looking for, and I'm going to change my hand here. Where do I start with my fingers? So I'm using my pencil again, and I'm measuring over to one side of my middle finger. And if you move that over to the other side, you would think that the middle would be right down the middle of the middle finger, but it isn't. So it's over to the edge that's closest to your little finger. So that's the center point. So I'm drawing a line kind of right down the center, and that is the edge of the middle finger. So when I start, I like to start there with the middle finger because in terms of the fingers as a unit, there's where most of your complication is. And the other thing that I want to talk about right now is, now you see when I bend my fingers here, you see that joint, those two basic lines that you have on at least 3 of the fingers. And when you look at the little finger, it's not nearly as pronounced. It's almost one line. It's 2, but they're so close together. Look at your own hand. Look at your own fingers when you bend it like that and see how that joint shows up on this side of your fingers. So I'm going to start. When I look at, here again, observation, the length of each unit, you'll find that the first from the palm going up your finger is just a little bit longer, and the second one is just a little bit shorter, and then the third one is just a little bit shorter. It's almost thirds, but not quite. So I'm going to start here. And the other thing I want you to observe is, now again, your fingers are different, but when I look at mine, they're not straight lines. The fingers going from this to this first joint and from there to the second joint, it's not a straight line. It's a little bit of a curved line. And so that's what we want to give it right here. So I've got 3 sections, and the last section is a little bit shorter than the middle section, and the middle section should be a little bit shorter. And if you see how I'm curving those, it's muscular. If you've ever looked at the bones of the finger and you go in and look at, you got the joints, which are the fattest part, but it doesn't show up like this because you've got your muscles, and that's what gives you your curve. So then basically there is a finger. And then when you go over to, see, this now is your reference, and that's one of the reasons that I start with the middle finger, is because it's the longest. And when you get into your index finger and you look at the relationship, where is that joint in relation to the joint of the middle finger? And it's almost exactly in the same place, just slightly lower. So And again, the index finger is one of your strongest fingers, in part probably because it's most used. And then if you look at the other joint, it's shorter than the one on the middle finger, so even a little bit shorter than the first joint. So we're going to come down here. And then finally, if you look at, if I'm hopefully holding my hand still in a position where you can see it, then the tip of the index finger is just a little bit shorter than your middle finger. So by using your middle finger as your reference, you have a relationship that you can relate to with the other fingers. So then you can come down this side. If you look at my hand, it's coming down rather straight in that position. And the other thing is you'll find is trying to keep your hand in the right position all the time while you're doing this. So okay, so then we're going to go to your fourth finger there, and if again looking at the joints, this is a little bit shorter, the finger altogether, but also each joint. So you can give yourself a little shorter, and it's okay, now don't be afraid to erase or change things to get things the way you want. That's what I was talking about, patience earlier. It takes time to actually get things where you want them. And I don't even like where I've got it now even. So that's one of the reasons why drawing lightly is so important, because when you make the changes, however many times you need to make the changes, you can do it. Now, if you look at this joint in relation to the middle finger again, the last joint up there, it's almost halfway. So considerably different. So we're going to put that right in here. And again, trying to keep my fingers in the same position. When you do this last one, it's just a little bit more than half. Yeah. And then finally, as we move over to our little finger, now here's something I want you to see. If you're using your pencil as a line going across the knuckles, you'll see that, if I take my ring off here for a moment, you can see how far down your little finger is, way down here. So that's important in terms of relationship. So we're going to bring that down a little bit down here. The first two, not so much. The second, your third finger here, it's coming down a little bit, especially on this side, but your little finger is dropping down here. And if you look at the first joint in relation to the first joint on the next finger, it's like halfway. So we can draw a smaller finger because it's your little finger. Now, again, I can't see your hands or your fingers, so I don't know where they are. Yours might be different than mine, but that's what you're going to be drawing, so it's okay. So then the last joint is just above that very first joint. That's how different your little finger is in relation to your other fingers. And then the tip is all the way up to the last joint of the other finger. So, and in my case, my nail is a little bit longer, and we'll get into that. Then if you look down the side here, at least it's pretty straight. I'm going to come down just a little bit. Now you see these creases, lifelines, call them whatever you want. This one over here kind of comes over to the level and then goes up to between your index finger and your middle finger. So you can see the angle of yours in relation to your hand, whereas your lifeline here is coming down a little ways from your index finger and then cutting across the middle palm of your hand, and then the other one going down to your wrist, right? So let's get that dark enough where you can see it. And then yours is going to be different, right? This isn't necessarily, but this is just to show you how you're looking at relationships, how one thing relates to another on your hand. So then we still have part of our palm coming down here. And when you're looking at your wrist, that's pretty straight off from there. Now we still have a thumb to deal with, and depending on the shape of your thumb, I see this crease for that knuckle going just right around where this crease goes into that part of your finger. Now I also see that coming out here. Then the rest of your thumb, where your knuckle is here, a little rounded on top, and then it comes back, hopefully you can see that, to where in relation to the rest of your palm, see that? So it comes back to here and then goes right to your wrist, basically. And your wrist, if you look up here, the relationship is pretty much straight back. So what we have then is, if we add, if you look at the nail here, and then up here you can add a little bit of nail, depending on how long your nails are, you know. Mine are not so long. So, and then here, if you look at where your thumb comes into the palm of your hand, you have some creases. And you can relate to that, however. This I'm going to just lighten up a little bit right here as it comes into the wrist. And then when I'm looking at my wrist right here, it kind of, and I'm going to make it darker just so you can see how that kind of relates like that. And you see how far down the little finger is here. And so basically, you can get a joint, your joint here, it's usually just a little crease up here. And then here, you can show a little bit of crease, the way it relates. And then here, you see it's kind of going, you got a crease going, because your fingers move. And so the relationship that you see from all of these, and then you do some adjustments once you kind of have it. Like I say, this would be drawn lightly to begin with, and then I would go over it, and as I'm going over it, I would adjust things. And so basically that's the beginning of drawing your hand. So thank you very much. And just like to say that originally we were going to have a class of just a handful of people, and because of the pandemic, we've ended up doing these tapes lessons. But the bottom line is, I just wanted to welcome those people who have joined us, and thank you for coming aboard. So thank you very much.